from a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA. This is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, innovative solar cooking techniques for your automobile dashboard. And now, the podcast host who makes the best solar baked goods this side of a Chevy Volt Club container, Pete Dominic.
Thank you very much, Pico. I can't wait to share with you my solar-baked delicacies. Great recipes I've got for you, apparently. Hope you had a great weekend, everybody. Thank you for those of you that listened to my Labor Day non-special with Michael Cohen. We had a fascinating conversation I posted yesterday morning. And thank you for pressing play on today's chat. I think you're going to really like and enjoy and get a lot out of my almost 1 hour conversation with one of my best friends, Professor Eric Segall. Folks say they always like when Eric joins me to talk about constitutional law issues. My dad said Eric is one of his all-time favorite guests, and they actually talked on the last time Eric was on. But today, Eric Segall and I have a great conversation about the finality of death and loss. If that's a thing that makes you feel scared right away, then you are not alone, because I am with you, which is why I thought a conversation like this is necessary. And I was so happy that Eric told me he wanted to have this conversation with me. So I think you're really going to like that. We had a thoughtful conversation. He had just lost two of his friends, just lost their wives. Another guy he knows just lost his sister. And it's a poignant, thoughtful, enlightening, and I think inspiring at times, obviously light and humorous conversation with a really good friends. And I think it's great when men talk this way. So the fact that Eric wanted to have the talk on the record to share with other people, he says helps him. That is the interview today. Usually I have two guests, but today I just wanted to put Eric on. A really great conversation I think you're going to love, and I hope that you will share with friends who you think need to hear it as well. But first, folks, a few clips. That's what I'm going to call this first segment. A few clips, few of my favorite tweets, and then Eric Segall. And that's going to be all of 25 minutes. If you don't want it, you want to get right to my conversation with Segall, fast forward to about the 25-minute mark. And I'm going to try to stick to one or two subjects. Of course, today, it's the huge news that that Trump was appointed a special master. I'm going to get a few clips from that. But first, three other unrelated things I wanted to play for you that I thought you'd like. Audio from Dropkick Murphy singer Ken Casey, who went on a screaming rant against former President Donald Trump and any supporters who buy into, quote, that election denying shit. Here he is performing at the Allentown State Fair, or Allentown Fairgrounds in Pennsylvania this past week. This is so good, as he says, if you're spouting that election denial bullshit, I will fight you.
If you were part of a union or working class people who were allowed to build a better life in the middle class in America, you fucking listen to us. Because if you're out there buying those fucking hats that these swindlers are selling at that fucking fair, I'm sorry kids, I know there's kids here, then you're part of the problem, and I'll tell you why. Because you're being duped by the greatest swindler in the history of the world. You're being duped by a bunch of grifters and billionaires who don't give a shit about you or your family. They care about their fucking tax breaks and the money they can put in their pocket. If you consider yourself a patriot and you're spouting off that election denying shit, I will fight your ass outside if you want to. Wake the fuck up! We're working class people. These people are the fucking rich, the billionaires, and they don't give a shit.
Oh, wow. He's letting them have it. It's Dropkick Murphy's frontman, Ken Casey. I'm a fan. All right, now this is John Fetterman. He is the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, of course, running for Senate against Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. Here he is, 18 seconds of Fetterman from yesterday.
In the Mon Valley, we make steel. We make steel. In New Jersey, Dr. Oz makes crudité.
All right, there you go. I thought that was pretty funny, John Fetterman. That's a funny joke on his part of his stump speech. And now here are the comedian journalists, the good liars. I love these guys. They were talking to a Trump supporter, I guess at a rally over the past weekend. This Trump supporter said that if Trump and Hillary committed the same crime, Trump should go free and Hillary should be arrested for treason. Trigger warning, this one's going to get you, but it certainly is enlightening.
Do you think Hillary Clinton should have been charged for treason?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But the Clinton clan will cover them no matter what happens.
And if Trump, it's found that he had the classified documents, would you want to charge him with treason?
No, negative. No, I would not.
Okay. If he did the same thing with Hillary, would you want him to be charged?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. But her, she could go treason, maybe potentially die. Him, if he did the same thing, no treason.
Because Trump is a patriot, Hillary is not.
Trump is a patriot, Hillary is not. What else do you need to know? Woo, that. I wonder how many of those guys, I wonder how many people think that way. If my guy does it, it's okay. If your gal does it, it's not okay, or whatever. What's that called? There should be a name for a person who thinks that way. And hypocrite's too obvious and too easy. Meanwhile, yesterday, Sleepy Joe was doing 2 stops on Labor Day. Here he is in Milwaukee, where he said MAGA Republicans defend the mob that stormed the Capitol. And then he went after the senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson. A minute from President Biden's speech yesterday in Milwaukee.
Extreme MAGA Republicans don't just threaten our personal rights and our economic security, they embrace political violence. Look, the reason, I'm not talking all Republicans, I'm talking about these extreme MAGA Republicans. Think about it. Think about it. The definition of democracy is you accept the will of the people when the votes are honestly counted. These guys don't do it. Name me a democracy in the world where a leader argues to engage in violence. To this day, MAGA Republicans in Congress defend the mob that stormed the Capitol and people died later. Senator Johnson said it was, by and large, a peaceful protest. Have you seen the videos, what happened that day? Listen to the stories of the members of both parties of Congress and the jeopardy they were put in. Cops attacked and assaulted, speared with flagpoles, sprayed with mace, stomped down, dragged, brutalized. Police lost their lives as a result of that day. And the MAGA Republicans and your senior senators said it was a peaceful protest.
All right, well, Joe Biden going after Ron Johnson in his home state, Wisconsin, Milwaukee yesterday. Like to see it. Like to see it. Well done, sir. All right, one more clip before the big story from yesterday. This is Amy Walter from the Cook Political Report. Great analysis on why this midterm election is much different than any before. She was on the PBS NewsHour last night. I love Amy. Here it is.
As we saw earlier in the program, we've seen this further developments in the DOJ investigation. We've seen President Trump very angrily responding to it, and this all coming on the heels of President Biden warning that there's a real threat to our democracy. Neither of those two men are on the midterm ballot.
Right.
And yet here they are center stage.
And yet you wouldn't know that. Right.
Right.
We've
Is
never
this going to matter?
Well, we've never seen anything like this before. I mean, midterm elections are almost always a referendum on the party that's in power. It's hard to make the out party the focus. The only time that has actually succeeded was in 1998 when it was Democrats in the White House, Republicans impeached then President Clinton. But the difference was that President Clinton was really popular. He had about a 60% approval rating. This president, of course, is not, and a great economy. And that's the other piece of this. So we've never really seen this before. Of course, we've never seen a former president put themselves in the politics front and center in the way that Donald Trump has. And it's pretty clear that the Democrats do believe that the coalition of voters who turned out in 2018, who turned out in 2020, not necessarily to vote for Joe Biden or vote for Democrats, but to vote against Donald Trump, that they're still out there, and they see that anytime he's in the news, it helps their prospects. And so they don't need to bring him in all that much, but he is still because he will put himself front and center, as you said, he had a rally this week. And even regardless of where these investigations go, remember we still have the January 6th committee that will hold hearings. We don't know how many, maybe one or so in the fall, and they still have to put a report out. Maybe that's before November.
Okay, I just thought that was great analysis from Amy Walter on the PBS NewsHour, and in for Judy Woodruff, by the way, that was William Brangham. And let's just stay with them as he introduces the big story that broke yesterday afternoon while I was at a fast food drive-thru that will not be named, waiting for my daughter to get her nails done before the first day of school.
A federal judge today approved former President Donald Trump's request for an outside legal expert to review the many files that were seized by the FBI from his Florida home. That decision temporarily blocks federal prosecutors from using any of that evidence as they investigate whether Mr. Trump broke the law.
All right, now I just grabbed a few clips for you to give you some perspective. Always love the king, as I'm now calling him, my king, Elie Mystal on MSNBC yesterday.
Proven it again and again and again. So when I say that you cannot trust Trump judges, I don't know what more evidence you need for that fact, right? Like, look, the argument that he has executive privilege is so what the scientists would call stupid. That it's difficult to explain it, right? Like the idea that, first of all, privilege goes to the current president. We only have one president at a time. So it's not Trump's privilege to have. But even if it was, as you pointed out, with Bill Barr, who believes that the executive of the United States is something closer to a king than a president, even Bill Barr says that if he had a privilege, that privilege still goes with the government, not with Trump. And so these documents belong in the archives. It'd be like if Trump's called for executive privilege over the plane and then parked the plane, Air Force One, at Mar-a-Lago. Can't do that. Even if it was his, we'd have the right to take it back. But when you allow Trump judges to infect the system, these are the kinds of decisions you get. And people, and this is my last point, people in the media need to stop standing for these Trump judges, need to stop pretending that these Trump judges are like the rest of the judicial system, right? They have to stop carrying water for them and start calling them out as they are, corrupt, leave behind gifts from the Trump administration to destroy the rule of law in America.
Yes, he's on fire, ladies and gentlemen. Elie Mystal, he referenced Bill Barr. Well, this is what he was talking about. Bill Barr was on Fox News yesterday, also criticizing this federal judge's appointment of a special master, which is a name from a bygone era we really do need to talk about getting rid of. Even the disgraced former attorney general and man who looks like the love child of Fred Flintstone and a toad shat upon the special master idea.
I think the whole idea of a special master is a bit of a red herring. What people are missing is that all the other documents taken, even if they claim to be executive privilege, either belong to the government because they're government records, even if they're classified, even if they're subject to executive privilege, they still belong to the government and go to the archives. If, in fact, he sort of stood over scores of boxes, not really knowing what was in them, and said, I hereby declassify everything in here, that would be such an abuse.
All right, my friend Glenn Kirshner had some really great commentary with Joy Reid on MSNBC. Here she is asking him an important question.
Is it allowed for a judge to essentially stop the investigation of a crime in progress? Stop the investigation, halt it. Have you ever heard of that?
I've never experienced judicial insanity. Evidence of crime that was found in Donald Trump's possession, those tests may be ongoing, and Judge Cannon just said, stop investigating Donald Trump. That, in my opinion, is judicial insanity. Evidence of crime that was found in Donald Trump's possession, those tests may be ongoing, and Judge Cannon just said, stop investigating Donald Trump. That, in my opinion, is judicial insanity.
Judicial insanity, and he had a lot more to say, Glenn did, on his YouTube channel and on Twitter. Check it all out. But here is some of the audio from the video that the former disgraced president put out himself shortly after this news broke yesterday.
And today we had a great legal victory. In fact, we're going to go eat at Legal Seafoods after to celebrate our great legal victory. And it's because Eileen, who the hell cares with her first name? They said to me, sir, we have a judge nominee and she's got cannons. And I said, I like that. I like that. I like one of the important things I look for in a judge is, do you watch adult films, or do you have a name like somebody who does adult films? And I remember they said, Neil Gorsuch. I said, he meets my very rigorous criteria. And they said, Brett Kavanaugh. And I said, that doesn't sound like a poor name. I said, well, he's been doing very strong snuff activities. And I said, well, we're going to get him confirmed so fast your head would spin. And then they came to me for a lower level judge, and I said, why the hell do I care? What the hell is going on with lower level judges? They said, sir, one day the radical left might come for you, and they'll do it through the stupid low courts, the ones nobody cares about. And I said, well, what's her name? What's the judge? And they said, Eileen Cannon. And I looked at her picture and I said, well, I think she's got some cannons, so we like that. Consider her at the top of my list. And so we did that. And then I learned that sometimes you need a special master when even the courts aren't friendly and nice. And I remember Mike Pence, the traitor Mike Pence, when he wasn't such a traitor. He ran into my office one day wearing a gimp mask, and he said, sir, I need a special master, sir. Will you please spank me? And I said, I don't think I'm going to do that, Mike, but thank you for the respect of calling me sir. And he went out, and I thought, what a great idea that to have a special master when the judges are too radical left. So lo and behold, today, in a beautiful day for our country, and frankly for justice, and for finally some law happening. Because, I'm the law and order president. We finally got some good law. Judge Cannon, whipped out her cannons and said, sir, you may not have liked Mike Pence, but allow me to be offering you a special master, sir. And I said, well, unlike Mike Pence, when a woman named Cannon says she's got a special master, I say, thank you. And she says, yes, sir. And we have a very nice time. So thank you to Judge Cannon and to whoever the hell our special master is, but it's called law, it's called America, it's called Christian. So thank you, and we'll see what happens. Sorry, very sad, Keebler Elf, Merrick Garland.
Just terrible sexist commentary from the former disgraced president who it's called America, it's called Christian. Incidentally, subscribe to everything that J.L. Covan is doing. All right. Well, I do also want to just share a couple of more responses from Twitter. I mean, every legal mind out there analyzing this unjustified special master ruling was just astounded, outraged, and sounding the alarms for what this might mean. So for just a little more, here are a few of
my favorite tweets.
Thank you, Pico, for the My Favorite Tweets jingle, and looking forward to the one John Carroll I know is cooking up. Feel free to send us any of your stuff, anything you want to enhance the show. All right, here are a few of my favorite tweets. Former basketball player and commentator Rex Chapman tweeted, the man under investigation for espionage was granted a special master today for classified documents he took from the people of the United States. We are a joke. My friend Allison Gill tweets, at Mueller, she wrote, breaking, as expected, Trump Judge Aileen Cannon ignores the law and precedent and appoints a special master and stops the government's criminal investigation review of materials, but allows the national security risk assessment to continue? Absolute BS. At angry_staffer tweeted, unbelievable. There's no such thing as a special master to review executive privilege, particularly for someone who isn't an executive anymore. This will almost certainly be appealed immediately. Rob Reiner tweeted, Trump being granted a special master to review the top secret classified documents that he stole will just slow things down. It will not protect him from his crimes. He will be indicted. Seth Abramson, the Trump-appointed judge who just needlessly assigned a special master to sift through the classified, non-privileged shit Trump stole, is like a pagan worshiper leaving rotten raccoon meat on the altar of the god of tiny fingers, whispering, please don't hurt me, MAGA terrorists. Wow. upset. And finally, Mark Joseph Stern over at Slate tweets, I predicted an outcome like this when the case got assigned to Judge Cannon and was assured that no judge would take Trump's absurd filing seriously. The problem, of course, is that Cannon is not a real judge, but a Trump judge, and one of the most corrupt of the bunch. You know, I didn't get any supportive tweets or comments. I'm sorry, I looked for like an hour. Not hard enough, apparently. But most legal analysts basically were saying some version of the clips and tweets I just shared with you. But if you've got some alternative points of view, send them my way, because we're certainly going to be discussing and debating this, I'm sure, in the days and weeks to come as this investigation potentially halts unless it's appealed. We will see. But now it's time to get to my first and only guest, who I had a very special conversation about life and loss with, Eric Segall and I. That is coming up. I'm really happy to share that with you today. But I do have to ask you to subscribe with a paid subscription to this show. We have about 750 or 60 subscribers. The goal has always been to have about 3,000 subscribers. I'm well short of that. I'm doubling down on promotion, putting out more video, continuing to work hard on the show and give you 2 great guests every day. If you have different ideas on how we can grow, I'd always like to hear from you, but certainly go to Apple and Spotify, give a 5-star review, write a review, tell your friends about it, and join us. Go to standupwithpete.com or just go to patreon.com/PeteDominic and sign up for as little as $5 or more. You can always edit your subscription up. And I've also got to tell you, for those of you who are running businesses yourself, you probably know that every single hire counts, and no hiring partner understands that like Indeed. Indeed, you guys, is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. So don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. If you hate waiting, Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. One thing I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy, because you got this instant match feature where candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in the search. So Indeed does all the hard work for you. Sponsor a job and boom! Instant Match shows you candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description immediately after you post. With Instant Match, you can start hiring fast. So join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows that when you're doing everything for your company, you can't afford to overspend on hiring. Visit Indeed.com/standup to start hiring right now. Just go to Indeed.com/standup. Indeed.com/standup. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application. Pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, with that said, now I want to share my conversation with Eric Segall. I think men need to have friends. We don't have enough friends. And if we do, we don't talk to them enough. And if we do talk to them a lot, we don't talk often about the most important issues. And we aren't vulnerable and don't communicate well and don't listen well. These are all issues that we certainly have as men. I mean, women have them as well, but I'm talking to the fellas here. Make friends through the stand-up community. I certainly have. So many of you I've become close personal friends with, guys and gals, and it's meant everything to me. But there is a huge issue with this. I've talked about it many times on the program. There's a ton of research about this. Make friends, find ways. I can help. I'll keep having these conversations with my friends to help role model these types of close relationships that you can and I think should be having with other men. Eric Segall and I have been close for a really long time, since he started listening, calling, and joining me as a special guest on my old program, now on my podcast. Very few people have been as good of a friend and as supportive as Eric has been with me, sharing so much wisdom about life and relationships and marriage and parenting and work and the world and politics and, of course, constitutional law, where we've learned so much from him. But recently, Eric suffered, or he would say his friends suffered, huge losses. His friend Mike Dorf lost his wife, and then his closest friend Rob lost his wife. Eric talks about all of it, as well as how he handled it, dealt with a health problem, logistics. I just thought this conversation was illustrative of how we might all behave and handle these types of situations, and why being a good friend is so important and what it all means. Eric was a little worried. He said at the end that this might sound self-indulgent. He said, well, here it is.
I'm not having this conversation with you of any need I have. It's just I like talking to you, and you think people like it, and that's why I do it. And if it didn't, I'm just nervous about it being perceived as self-indulgent, and that's not what it is.
All right, well, here is my conversation with con law professor at Georgia State University, the author of Originalism as Faith, Supreme Myths, as well as his own podcast, Supreme Myths, which you should listen to. Would you start light with a little chat about his guinea pig farm that apparently they've got now? And then we get into the serious stuff. Let's do it.
All I know is that when a mother guinea pig, we are drowning in guinea pigs, and when a mother guinea pig gives birth to a male guinea pig, then the guinea pig lady has to come by the house and take the male guinea pig away. Otherwise, they will have sex with the mother. I've learned this in the last 2 months.
The babies will have sex with their mother, and that's inevitable, or it's sometimes. Is it an aberration, or is it in always? Because you're spreading a lot of. If I choose to include this in the podcast, I would beg people to look it up before we disparage.
I don't have the answer. This is the full extent of my knowledge.
Okay.
We are now a foster guinea pig family. We have several cages and double-digit guinea pigs. And every now and then, Lynn says to me, we're going to get a new baby guinea pig. And then Kai, my youngest, gets excited. And then a new guinea pig is in the world. And then either 3 weeks later or within 3 weeks, the guinea pig lady shows up and either takes that guinea pig away or does not. The reason that she shows up to take that guinea pig baby away is because it's a male who she says, if I don't take this guinea pig baby away, he will have sex with his mother and therefore breed new and defective guinea pigs. And we don't want that.
Defective.
I think that's the thought behind that. Although the whole concept of any being, Mike Dorff, my friend, who would say sentient being, a being who can feel pain, and having sex at 3 weeks old is a very interesting thing. I don't know.
Let me just one quick question. When you or your wife, Lynn, meet new people, how quickly does the fact that you have double digits guinea pigs in your home, does that, how far into a relationship, what kind of relationship? Is it just like you just met somebody, or you really have to trust them? Because, I mean, you're telling the entire world now, but not to their face. They're not coming to your house.
Well, it turns out, I know I've told this story before on your show or podcast or both. It turns out that a very momentous moment in Lynn's and mine life happened over a guinea pig, in that it is an absolute fact, historical fact. I'm a legal realist. I don't believe we can really recreate a lot of history, but this we can, because I was there and I witnessed it and I was part of it. It is an historical fact that I proposed to Lynn when she had a guinie pig in her shirt.
That's right. We have heard that story. She had a guinea pig in her shirt during your proposal. We've heard that here, and it never gets old. So it's, I guess it's symbolic. So that's a way for you to, I guess, defend the fact that you have so many guinea pigs to a new person.
I don't have to defend this because it's not something I have control over. In other words, they show that. So one day I had my house had 2 80-pound labs, a bird, and 2 guinea pigs. And a few days later, we had all those things plus 5 more guinea pigs. I didn't really ask questions. And then 4 or 5 days after that, we had I'm not exaggerating this, somewhere between 15 and 20 guinea pigs. And then I started and more cages. And I started to ask questions. And then said, more or less, I was kind of wondering when you were going to ask me about this. And I said, I'm asking you about it now. And she said, well, I hope you don't mind, but we decided to be in the foster guinea pig business. And I said, well, who do you mean? What's the we in that sentence? Define the we in that sentence.
Fair.
And my wife, being perceptive, said, no, I mean I, and maybe Kai a little bit. And I said, oh. And then all of a sudden, for the last 3 months, we've had just guinea pigs come and go. We've had guinea pig ladies. I didn't know there was such a thing as a guinea pig lady. But
your relationship is so much different than mine. If I said, I hope you don't mind, but I've decided to get into the rodent protection business.
Guinea pigs are not rodents. Well, they may be, but
sure are. If I said that, and then there were a bunch of cages, Val, who you've met, she would punch me right in the face. There's never been physical violence, but there would be then. I know there would be. I would see it coming, though, and I would duck, and then there would just be screaming. She's terrified of, hates mice. It really did bother her.
But these aren't mice. Let's be clear.
But they're the same. But there's okay. Listen, stop. There's nobody that looks at a mouse or a guinea pig differently. No one says, "Oh, you know what I don't like is mice, but I'm fine with the guinea pig." I don't think that person is. That's all I'm saying.
So have I? If we're going to talk
Am
about
I right? Do you agree with me, though?
Yeah, my life revolves very much around guinea pigs, which is okay because, frankly, so much of life's been shitty for the last couple of weeks that trivial things actually all of a sudden become less, kind of.
I don't think your wife would think the guinea pig fostering is trivial, but
in fact, now I can't have her listen to this because
strike that.
I would be
right.
Yes, edit that out, please.
Let's talk about. I'm not going to. Let's talk about your last couple of weeks and.
Sure.
Loss, you've got a new piece that you'll be posting at Dorf on Law, and probably should mention just straight up what happened. You put this out on Twitter, so this has been somewhat public, but you decided you would want to have the conversation that I've been wanting to, or I've been here for. If you wanted to have it, you decided we would roll on this and you would share it because this is a really important experience that you're dealing with, and it's different for everybody. And
well, one of the on that point, Pete, just real quick,
sure.
One of the things that I've learned about myself in the last few years, and I think we always have to learn more about ourselves. That's kind of no matter how old and senile one is.
I agree.
I find that when I go through emotional times that are hard, or even emotional times that are very good, either one, but mostly emotional times that are hard. And this is weird, and I don't expect. I think a lot of people would look at this and go, "Wow, that's weird," but I find writing about it very important. That's not as weird, but I do. I find writing about it important.
You're more talking about writing about it and sharing it with the public versus
That's
writing.
The weird part. The sharing
got it.
is the weird part.
Okay.
And yes. I find, and you and I are very close friends, and I find that when you have issues, you call me, and when I have issues, I call you, and we do that a lot and don't share it.
It's more the former.
Yeah, right. A lot of times, that's true. A lot of times we don't. I want the public to understand, your listeners, we don't share a lot of what we talk about. But there are times when I feel like we can, from either your or my life, we can generalize things. And if that helps one person, then I feel good about it.
Well, I've been doing it my whole career, which is what I think endears, in my case, a host to an audience. I mean, there are people who are able to kind of share a lot and be transparent. I've always wanted to be that person. It's so helped me and so helped others. And then the audience helps you. Like they have gone through what you've gone through. So for me, that works. Right. I'm not saying that's why you necessarily do it, but so you would write about, generally speaking, you would write about something and publish it or post it somewhere publicly and people could read it there. Yes. And you are doing that in this case, but I don't know if I interrupted you, but what are we talking about in terms of your loss?
Let me just tell the story because it's, and this may be edited out because it may be too dull. Lynn and I were invited to a private ceremony honoring John Lewis in Troy, Alabama, because Lynn knows his family through various professional affiliations.
Former Congressman, civil rights hero, John Lewis.
Really one of the great.
Everybody knows who he is, right?
Yeah, and one of the great heroes of our time, certainly. And from what I can tell, I met his family too. They all seem to be wonderful, heroic type people. Anyway, we live in Atlanta. John Lewis is buried in Atlanta, but he's from Troy, Alabama. And Troy, Alabama is roughly a 3-hour drive from Atlanta. And this very private, wonderful ceremony was going to be on Saturday morning of last week. A week ago yesterday. So we set out with our teenage children who begged us to go late in the night because they wanted to hang out with their friends as teenagers are wont to do. So we left Atlanta around 7:00 at night, and I wasn't feeling great, but we went anyway. And I was really excited about seeing this, being part of this ceremony, because John Lewis is a personal hero of mine, having studied the civil rights movements and all that. He's also, by the way, the last person alive. He was the last person alive who was on the stage when Martin Luther King gave his 1963 speech.
Oh, wow. I did not. Wow. Okay.
I should say I have not researched that. I have been told that. That's okay. I can't vouch for that fact, but I've been told that by several people.
He was a younger man during that movement, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, he was an incredible kid, but he was basically a kid. Anyway, so we headed to Alabama with a heavy heart, because you constantly promote my work on Dorf on Law. Mike Dorf, who is one of the more famous law professors in the country, and clerked for Justice Kennedy during the Casey opinion. I'm not saying he had anything to do with the Casey opinion. I'm just saying Mike was his law clerk during that term. Mike's wife had passed the day before, and it was very sad. And it was not unexpected in her case, but it was, very, very sad. And Mike's a good friend. So we were going to go to Alabama, go to the service, the ceremony for John Lewis on Saturday morning. And then I had like a 4:00 flight to New York, something that late afternoon. So I would go to Mike's wife's funeral on Sunday. Because I knew his wife a little bit. I know Mike much better, but his wife was also a law professor. And in the last 3 months of her life, and I really want people, this is one thing I do want people to do, she blogged about abortion and the Supreme Court and religion in a way you don't hear from law professors ever. I go in that territory at times, but her truth, the way she expressed how angry she was, how awful Justice Alito was, how terrible the opinion was.
Where do we find these?
Well, I'm going to have, and this piece coming out in a couple of days, there'll be links to 2 of her pieces. But if you just go to Dorfman Law and scroll down like a couple of weeks, you'll see these pieces, and they really are, I think.
Sherry
unique.
Kolb was her name.
Yes. Yeah. And unique's a strong word, because unique really means just one, so that it's a strong word. But they were written. Well, she knew, tragically, she knew she was going to pass soon because she was very sick. Where she got the strength to do this, I don't know. And it's amazing. And just this morning, someone posted something on her on Facebook about what an amazing woman she was. And she really was. But these blog posts specifically will interest anyone interested in the issues of abortion, the Supreme Court, and religion. Huh. And they're all intertwined. All 3 of those things are intertwined. And Sherry wrote about them in a way that is as raw as any law professor work I've ever seen in my life, including my own. And I feel like I sometimes get much more real than most of my colleagues. This was the most real thing I've ever read about these issues. So anyway, I was looking forward to the John Lewis thing, and I was very sad for my good friend Mike, and sad for everybody, because she was a great law professor. So anyway, we wake up Saturday morning, and I have a phone call, a text from my best friend, who I should explain was my college roommate. We lived together in 1977, 78, and 79. Were you born then, Pete?
I was born in 1975. Yeah.
Okay. So I was living with him while you were in diapers.
We didn't have diapers. We didn't have that kind of cash. No, we weren't rich like you, but go ahead.
And I met his wife 3 hours after he did, and had known her for that amount of time. And he is, he's been my best friend for that 45 years. And so I got a text from him saying, call ASAP. His wife, Bonnie, had been in the hospital. But nothing, we thought she was going to leave the hospital. It wasn't, we knew Sherry's death was coming, and we were all sad about that. Bonnie died at Friday night after I turned my phone off somewhere around 12 o'clock Eastern time. And this was unexpected. And this was a blow, an unimaginable blow to me, because for the last 45 years or so, it was, when I described my best friend to people, I talked about their lives. It was Rob and Bonnie. It was always Rob and Bonnie.
Rob and what?
Bonnie. Her name was Bonnie.
Got it.
It was Rob and Bonnie. That's just what it was.
Yeah.
And now I am not suggesting in any way they had some magical marriage devoid of, they had the typical, I strike that. They had a very strong marriage, but they had many ups and downs and many curves in the road. One of which was in her 30s, she was going to die because of kidney failure. And back then, this is not true anymore, my understanding, but back then, finding a match was really difficult. And without a transplant, she was going to die in her 30s. And that was going to be really tragic. And it turned out that being on the transplant list was complicated in her case for reasons I don't want to go into. But it turned out Rob's kidney matched.
Oh, wow.
So Rob, in fact, gave his wife his kidney. And for the rest of her life, until she died last week, Rob's kidney was inside of her.
Wow. I really thought because you said when they had their ups and downs, I swear to God, I thought this, and I'm not trying to be funny. Like, she needed a kidney, Rob's matched, but he wouldn't give it to her. And an argument ensued that was really damaging.
No.
Can you imagine? I was like, wait, what? I'm sorry now with my interjection of implying somehow.
People don't know. People can live on one kidney, as my friend Rob has shown for the last 45 years.
Yeah, no, I know a few, and I've done segments about it in the past. So, yeah. So that's amazing. So she passed away with his kidney. Yes. Go ahead.
She passed away from a combination we don't know, and we're never going to know exactly. But it was a combination of COVID, kidney failure, but what eventually took her life was her heart stopped.
Wow.
So that happened at 7:30. And by the way, I just, I want to intersperse light moments in this, just so people don't. Let me just say this. I've lived in the South now since 1976, pretty much. And I am not I love the South, and that's why I continue to live there. I had family at one point in time in Auburn, Alabama, and Opelika, Alabama, which is about an hour and a half from Atlanta. The drive, once you get past Auburn, from there to Troy, Alabama, I think I have more in common with people who live in Moscow.
Maybe not Moscow, but
no, Moscow. And I also think that ride is all back roads, and it's just I can't even describe it. And then out of literal darkness, and not swamp technically, but just back road America, like you can't even imagine. Troy, Alabama, where he was born, John Lewis, appears like the Emerald City, with a big football stadium with lights. And it's a very, very, very strange transition from, but what I did notice was the road that took us right to the hotel we were staying at. And this, Pete, I can't get past this. I'm sorry. It's called George Wallace Boulevard.
George. That's the name of the street is named after.
That's the name.
George Wallace,
he was the governor of Alabama and one of the leading segregationists, if not the leading segregationist of the 1960s, and ran for president as a third party, and I think actually got a state or two, although I don't remember exactly that. But his name is synonymous with segregation
and the desire. George Wallace, the comedian. I didn't.
Right.
But I knew what you meant, and I wanted you to say specifically what he had done. His name is synonymous with
segregation.
Yeah.
But not even segregation. His name is synonymous with the fight to keep segregation. Right. I believe he said, this is an exact quote, but it's close. Segregation yesterday, segregation today, segregation forever. I believe that was his quote. And why Alabama would still have a road named after this monster of a human being is beyond my comprehension. Now, having said that, in Georgia, there are all kinds of roads, Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, all that stuff. And we've talked about that before. But it's, I can't describe this and I can't explain it, but it seems like, but George Wallace was our time. And he was a villain in our time.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
And maybe in 1953, we can excuse some of his behavior, but he was saying these things in 1968. When he ran for president, he was saying these kind of racist
his ghost does seem to have embodied some of the most influential people in media and politics.
Yes, that's fair. So that was kind of weird. So we wake up Saturday morning. I see on my phone, call me ASAP.
Yeah.
Call my friend, and Bonnie has died. And I was punched in the stomach by Muhammad Ali. It was just, and I don't think Rob would mind me saying that what he said was, it's always been me and Bonnie. It's true, it wasn't always he and Bonnie, but it was he and Bonnie since he was 18 years old. And he's now 63. And, it was just unfathomable to me. It made no sense that she could be dead. And that's the thing about loss that I'm really struggling with. So that happened. So immediately what happens is we tell the kids we're not going to the John Lewis ceremony. Mm-hmm. I have to get to DC as soon as I can to be with my best friend. And I write Mike Dorff and I say, Mike, I am terribly sorry. And it breaks my heart, but I can't come to Sherry's funeral because I have to go to a different funeral. And more than that, I have to go. And Mike, it was only, of course, Eric, go do what you have to do.
I heard he kicked you off the blog.
Mike could not have been. Mike's a classy guy.
Yeah. Jesus, I thought I had made a mistake when I told somebody that you had these two people in your life who had suffered such losses, and certainly in your best friend's case, it was a real personal loss, right? Not to say.
Yeah. In both it was, but in my best friend's case, it was absolutely.
Yeah.
Rob's my family. It's like a family.
Right.
Member.
Right.
What that was. Yeah. And by the way, just I don't want to minimize this. So Dorff on Law. Mike is Mike Dorff, and his wife, Sherry Kolb, used to contribute occasionally to the blog until the last few months of her life when she wrote pretty much 50 of them, all of which are excellent. But there's a law professor named Neil Buchanan. He and Mike have been best friends forever. Neil writes every week, twice a week.
Yeah, I like Neil's stuff.
And Neil lost his sister a week before this.
Good God, sir.
Right. So Mike lost his wife. And again, I'm not Well, Mike lost his wife. Neil lost his sister. And when I say I lost my best friend's wife, it sounds kind of weird, but that's what I'm not comparing my loss but it was just all three horrific things happening within 3 weeks of each other. Just terrible, horrible stuff.
I mean, just knowing three people that pass away and that kind of I mean, it's I'm sure it happens. I don't know how you deal with that. What do you want to say? What are you writing about it? I mean, what are you feeling? How are you dealing with it? I've texted you a few times since I found out, just to be like, hey, dude, if you want to talk, obviously I always want to. But I mean, here we are now. I mean, what are you processing? What are you experiencing? What are you thinking?
I want people to understand that most of all, I'm just trying to support my friends. I mean, that's the number one thing. Neil and I don't know. I know Neil a little bit. I don't know him well. I didn't know his sister. And I tried to support him by helping him support Mike, because the blog has to.
What does your support look like? I was going to ask you this earlier. Now's a good time. Like, was it hard to make the decision to fly to New York for Mike's wife's funeral? Was it hard to make the decision to not go to the John Lewis ceremony? Were either of those decisions hard as?
None of those. I was always going to go. I mean, going to Mike's wife's funeral was just, Mike and I have worked together now for 10 years. And the way it works is I write something, because Mike is, I've told you before, there are people in my field, there are law professors, some of whom aren't that smart. Most of them are like me, reasonably smart. And then there are a few who are wicked smart. And there's not many of those. There's not many. Mike is one of those people.
I trust your judgment. Yeah.
When I write a blog post, almost always Mike looks at it, and 80% of the time he'll catch a typo or something, but say it's great. But much of the time he'll go, Eric, point number 3, are you sure you want to say it this way? Because I think this, or I don't agree with point. It's your blog, you can say whatever you want, but I'm pushing. He said, I mean, it's your piece. But so Mike and I have worked together really closely. And since I write a blog post a week, pretty much, we worked together for 10 years, really closely. And I've had him down in Georgia State several times professionally. So I feel a strong closeness to him. Once I knew it was going to be, some people are very private funerals, only family and friends. Once I knew Mike was having a funeral where, a lot of people were coming, then it was no doubt to me I was going to go. And I know Mike was very appreciative of that. But
I'm going to ask the question that people might be afraid to ask, because it's not.
I don't even know if people care about any of this. So if you bore people, I'm sorry. I apologize.
My question is, what does it mean when you're the person who has suffered the loss and you have a funeral or a ceremony and a friend flies across the country? I would almost feel it like I'm so happy to see you, but I can't believe you're here and I don't get really any time with you.
So that's interesting, right?
It feels let's
talk about that, because let's talk about that, because that is.
I've never been in that position. I know how much it means to see you. It means so much. Right. You're making me feel good that you're in my presence. Oh, you're walking away. Oh, here comes the next person that just flew across the country.
So in Mike's case with Sherry, I just wanted Mike to know that I feel enough about him and his wife, who's passed, and our relationship, that I'm going to. My wife Lynn has a saying, and I think and she's taught me this. I didn't really have this as much before I met her. Show up. Friends show up. I once missed a wedding of a close friend for a very bad reason. I regretted it my entire life. Friends show up. So I wasn't expecting, frankly, to talk. Mike and I we're close, but Mike has a whole world of people I don't know who are very close to him. I was not going to take up space and time in that. I just wanted him to know I was making the effort to be there.
I think you were there to network.
And that was important. And that was important to me. In Mike's case.
Is it true you brought several copies of your book?
I had a book signing on the side.
It's a book signing.
But having not gone, but I never made it there, because
right. You didn't even make that.
Case, in Rob's case, it is completely 100. It's very different, other than Rob's immediate family. Well, I'm as close to him as anybody.
So it's like in Rob's case, I mean, if this is too personal or whatever, but like if it were my best friend, I'll just talk about me. There would be, if I suffered a tragic loss, there would be certain people I would want to be around me.
Yes.
Most of the time. And me being who I am, probably all of the time. And I'm lucky to have those type of people in my life. You'd be on the bubble. But no, I'd want you here, I'd want you taking care of any number of things for me. What should I do? I can't think straight. And I'm like, could you do this? And you'd be like,
Well,
listen, I don't know how to use computers, Pete. Is there any other friend?
I break computers by walking by them.
No, but I mean, so that's what I would want. And it seems like that's what, I mean, what was your role in this?
Well, my role with Rob, selfish is the wrong word for this, but I had to be there for me. I know Rob, and I know he needed to be there.
Okay.
And in
sure.
addition, and it was very frustrating, Pete, because I was in Boondocks, Alabama. The closest airport was Atlanta Airport.
Did you mention where Rob and his wife lived? I'm sorry.
DC.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, and also Lynn knows Rob well enough where Lynn really had to be with me in DC. And plus I needed her there too. So that required, we had a house sitter staying with our 2 dogs, 1 bird and 15 guinea pigs. This house sitter has stayed with our kids before when we, occasionally Lynn and I take trips. Occasionally we travel to.
Is that the word you use? I would use Fridays, but whatever.
And sometimes we take our children and sometimes we don't. So she stayed, and our kids, it's like an aunt to our kids. So anyway, so the very first thing that happened, this was the order of things. I wept and then consoled me. That was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened was I wrote Mike and I said, I am so terribly sorry I can't make it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I explained why. The third thing that happened is we woke up our kids and said, we are leaving, get dressed. The fourth thing that happened was we texted a friend who was staying at our house and said, is there any chance you can stay Sunday? And the funeral was going to be either Sunday or Monday. We weren't sure. Could you stay 2 or 3 more nights and take our kids, be with our kids, just to take care of our teenagers? And thank God she said yes. If she had said no, I have other good friends in Atlanta I would trust with that. But one of my best friends in Atlanta I knew was at the beach 5 hours away. And a couple of other friends, frankly, have other things in their lives going on medically that make it difficult. So that would have been a real problem.
At what point would you have called me down? At no point.
You were next on the list. No, you were the next call. But luckily, would
I have to pay for the flight?
Actually, Pete, to be honest, I was going to call Val and have her come down, but no.
That's great. She would have done it. Well, so next, what happened? So you get the coverage.
So we drive back home immediately. I called Delta and we changed everything around. We got a 4:00 flight to DC. But first we had to drive the 3 hours back home to Atlanta. Right. And I was prepared. I had a suit. I had my funeral clothes because I was going to, Lynn was going to drop me off at the airport.
But she didn't have her stuff. Yeah.
But she didn't have her funeral clothes and all that stuff. So we went home and did all that, came back, and for some reason, either karma, fate, God, or just pure science decided this is going to get really personal to, at that moment in time, give me an incredibly painful kidney stone all at the same time, which had started on Friday. And I had said to Lynn...
A kidney stone. Now all of a sudden you have a kidney stone?
Not all of a sudden. On Friday, driving down, before I heard about Rob's wife, I had said to Lynn, if the ceremony for John Lewis is very long and there's no bathroom, I'm going to have a problem because I'm starting to feel bad. I know what kidney stones feel like. I've had 2. I don't want to talk about this much, but I knew I was getting another kidney stone. And that's not something you want to have when you're traveling.
We talked about, there's a whole episode dedicated to your last stone.
That's true. That's true.
I got to go look it up. So, what episode? If you like conversations about passing a kidney stone, you'll love episode. I'll have to edit that in later. But no, that actually, people really liked when you talked about that. But go ahead. Really, this is very relatable and very helpful. It's
unconscionably painful and horrible, and that was happening too. So that wasn't helping the matter.
Right.
To tell the whole story, I guess I have to say we land in DC at 6:00, and I am in absolute agony of pain. I have a very high threshold. Lynn would say, among the many things she would say about me that are not good, she would say I have a very high threshold of pain.
For pain,
and I was just, it was horrific, and I won't go into details. So I had to make a decision, and I was already feeling guilty because I had turned my phone off Friday night 5 minutes before Rob said, call me ASAP.
Right.
And I knew Bonnie was in the hospital. I didn't know it was this terribly serious, but I knew she was in the hospital, and I should have kept my phone on, and I didn't. Lynn has her phone on Do Not Disturb, so that if something happens to at home or something, Verna could reach her, or our friend could reach her.
Yeah.
I'm not that sophisticated to know how to do that favorites thing or whatever she does. So I felt terribly guilty. So I felt bad. It was taking me a full 24 hours to get to DC. And then, because it's only a 2-hour flight from Atlanta, but we weren't in fucking Atlanta. We were 3 hours away in a part of the country if I never see again. Frankly, I'll be very happy. So Sorry about that. I just insulted Alabama. I'm sorry. I apologize. But I've insulted Alabama before on your show, so I think it's okay.
Alabama does get offended easily.
Shelby County versus Holden. That's Shelby County, Alabama. Versus Holden.
Well, there you go.
Yes. So Lynn looks at me and goes, Eric, if you go to Rob's house right now, where, his immediate family was there consoling him and all that, you will be no good to anybody because you are in the bathroom all the time. You are a wreck. You're not yourself. Everything is bad. And we're in Washington, D.C. on Saturday night at 6:00, which means our only option was to go to the emergency room. So I wasn't going to stay with Rob because his sister and her kids and his brother and his daughters, we're all going to be staying at his house. And I didn't want to put that burden on him. Luckily for me, I have very close friends who live very close to Rob. He lives in Rockville. They live in Bethesda. And they knew all about this. And they offered their home to us because we were very close. So I call up my friend and I say, we're coming to your house eventually, but right now I have to get to an emergency room. Please make a suggestion. And she had grown up in Bethesda. So she said, Sibley Memorial Hospital is a place for you. And I said, okay, that sounds fine.
You said it like that? The place for you? Sounds like a nursery school.
We head off to Sibley Memorial Hospital. And of course, it's an emergency room on a Saturday night during COVID. And of course, everything is crowded and it takes a while, and frankly, the woman behind me, I hope she's not listening. I'm sure she's not. There was a woman behind me who I heard her say on the phone to her friend, I've been throwing up for 16 hours. I'm like 6 months pregnant. And the doctor told me to come here. And I was just like, well, go ahead. I'm suffering horribly, but you go ahead. But eventually
you can establish a priority line there. Was your name up on the board?
But eventually I sign in and the woman takes my insurance information and all that, that goes. And she says to me, you're in our records. And I say, no, I'm not. Because I did live in Bethesda for a year. I've never been to this hospital. I've never seen it. This emergency, I don't know her. No, you have me mixed up with somebody else.
You're dead.
And she says, are you Eric John Segall, born June 1st, 1958?
This is heaven.
And I say, yes, I am. How am I possibly in your record? She says, I don't know, but you're here. But she said, I assume your insurance has changed since 1990 or something. I said, yes. So anyway, that was a mystery. Anyway, she said, it's going to be a fairly long wait, but go ahead. They'll triage you sometime in the next hour. So we go
that's got to be the worst words you can hear.
It's
usually don't tell you about how long the wait is in my experience.
And when they say it's going to be a wait.
Yeah. Oh, God, Eric.
I text my friend Marley and I say, we're here. I'll let you know when we're out. I text Rob and I say, it breaks my heart to tell you this. I'm actually in DC, but you don't want me. I don't want you to worry about anything. So I have a kidney stone. It's not life threatening, but it's horrible. And I will see you as soon as I can see you. And of course, Rob was preoccupied anyway for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
His wife had died 12 hours earlier. So, 20 hours earlier. So I write Marley and I say, they say I've been here before, which is really weird because I've never been here before. To which Marley says, yes, you have. And I say, how would you possibly know I've been here before? Because I have not been here before. And she wrote back, yes, you have. And I said, okay, Marley, will you please now inform me how you know I've been here before? And it turns out my friends Art and Marley, when my first wife and I found out that she was pregnant with Jessie, my oldest daughter, we called our friends Art and Marley after about 2 months and said, we have something to tell you. Can we come over for dinner? And they were like, of course. And we went over to their house for dinner. And she said, that's good because we have something to tell you too. And it turns out that my wife and Marley, ex-wife and Marley's would do exactly the same day, which was great because we were really close friends.
Wow.
And then Marley tells me on this phone call 31 years later that, in fact, we took birthing classes together at that hospital. And that's why they had me in there.
Well, you were thinking I'd never been here for...
Yes, exactly.
Healthcare. I'd never been for an emergency. I'd never been here for a procedure, but I was here for a child birthing class.
I was not thinking that, but that's in fact what happened.
Right.
Wow. So that was all bizarre. 6 hours later.
They had child birthing classes that long ago.
There were no diapers back then, so they were more complicated.
It was just...
So it took 6 hours. And I don't want to go into details, but 6 hours later...
You passed that stone.
No, I did not pass that stone. They
blasted it.
Nothing like that happened. They wanted me to get a catheter.
Yes, and you love catheterization.
I despise. I've had it once in my life, and I despise.
That's the worst. Apparently, the worst. We talked about it. Yes.
But there's a lot going on here with Sherry, and then of course with Bonnie and everything. And it's just, and I say no, and they say, well, we really think you should have one. And then it's like, Eric, if they're telling you, and finally I said, look, I will go home. It's now 1:00 in the morning. And I'm like, I'm not going to Rob's now. So I'm going to go home and drink 1 million gallons of water. And if I still have the issue that no urine is coming out of my body, tomorrow afternoon, early afternoon, I will come back and you can put a catheter. There's all kinds of issues, Pete, about them putting a catheter in a new city. It's more complicated than but there's no point going into those details. So in any event, I went home to Art and Molly's house, and they were, as you know, they saved our lives basically on this trip. And by Sunday afternoon, I was still bad, but not as bad. And so I went to Rob's house and I went to spend time with him and learned that the funeral was going to be Monday. And then they were going to sit Shiva, which they had to explain to me what that was because I'm not really Jewish, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then I started, and since then, frankly, I have been doing nothing but, so I was there until Wednesday. Lynn had to fly back Monday. The funeral was Monday. Lynn flew back Monday night because the person watching our kids could not stay past Monday night. Lynn flew back Monday. I came back on Wednesday to teach on Thursday. And then I flew back on Saturday where I am. I'm not in DC. I'm at their house a couple hours away from that.
What
I'm
about
with
the
Rob.
stone?
That's an ongoing saga.
It's still there.
I don't want to go into it. Let me just say that I think I'm mostly past it, so to speak, but I'm not out of the woods. But adrenaline is an incredible drug.
That's an interesting thing to explore. I mean, but that's kind of my big question to you about all of this. I think that this conversation is important because how do different people exist, live, function, be a decent person with four things coming at them? And that's a question about resilience, but I think it's really different for everybody. And if you've dealt with it a lot your whole life, maybe you have tools, maybe you don't, but coping mechanisms, ideas, resources. But I haven't had it a lot, and so when I've had it, it really paralyzes me. And I luckily have a great network of people that I can talk to, and for me, that's most helpful. But man, I don't know how you're dealing with these losses, then a health issue. That's an interesting mix.
Well, I want to be clear. Although I was very miserable, and I'm still.
We understand what it is. You're in pain.
Wait. Yeah. It's really important. I don't want you to air this even unless I get this out right away. This is not about me. I mean, that's so.
Well, I made it about your resilience because
But I don't want it to be about that.
That's all right. Well, what do you want it to be about?
I want it to be about. I think what other people might be more interested in, I can talk about that, frankly, off air or whatever we call this podcast world. But I've been thinking deeply and a lot about the finality of death because I'm not a person of faith.
All right,
I think a person of faith has different coping tools, right? I don't have any of those coping tools. And I've been so lucky and blessed in my life where I've had a couple friends die and my mom passed, but I've not had a lot of death in my life for a 54-year-old. And this one was unexpected. They leave behind two kids who are older, but still have some needs. I mean, more needs than the average kids. And the finality of it was incomprehensible to me. It could not be that Bonnie was gone. It just could not be. And in fact, when Rob did the eulogy, one of the things he said was, it's impossible that I don't have Bonnie anymore. It's just not a possibility. And Lynn and I talked about this because Lynn's father died when she was 14.
Right,
and the thing she remembers the most, and to this day still affects her, is the finality of it. Like, it's always been Rob and Bonnie. Always. Now it's just Rob. And then Rob asked me to say a few words, in the Jewish tradition, I guess, because I didn't know this until this week. First you have the funeral, and then you sit Shiva for however many nights it is. And at the Shiva, a rabbi comes and gives a little bit of a service, and then people very close to the family or, speak and say a few words. And Rob asked me to do that on Tuesday. The funeral was Monday. And I am a person who is very comfortable speaking in public, obviously. And I didn't know what I was going to say. Sure. I knew I had a couple funny stories. I mean, you will like the first story I told, because, and trust me, you will like this, because the first time I met, so Rob and Bonnie go off on a date. They were fixed up in 1977 by a mutual friend. And the plan was they were going to go to dinner and a movie. And I was sick that day, and in our little tiny dorm room that was like, tiny. And back then, Emory didn't have classes on Wednesdays. It was called Wonderful Wednesday. Oh. And so every Tuesday night was like a week. So Emory had 3 weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Tuesday night. So they don't have that anymore, but it was very strange. So they went out, and I wasn't expecting them back for a long time. So I was in my bathrobe, not feeling well. And they came back like 2 hours later because Rob had gotten sick too. Whatever I had, Rob had too. And they walk into the room, and Bonnie's about 5'9" tall. I'm sorry, I can't even say was, but Bonnie was 5'9", 5'10". I'm 6'6", for those people who haven't seen me. And Bonnie walked in, and I was wearing this, like, I wasn't expecting them, and I was wearing this old blue 1970s. They were wearing their John Travolta. You were wearing a house coat, a robe. A bathroom. Okay. And I jokingly said, and they explained that Rob wasn't feeling well, so they came back, and I jokingly said to Bonnie, well, you're going to see my legs before you saw Rob's. Or if you see, you're seeing my legs before you're ever going to see Rob's. This was their first thing. And Bonnie had a great sense of humor and good timing, and looked at me and said, well, that would be true if I could see your legs, but you're so short, and I'm so much taller than you. Wow. I can't see that far down. Wow. And that was the first sentence she ever uttered. Powerful woman. And since, yes, and since you like making height jokes and age jokes, I later appreciate. Well, I mean, you just immediately grabbed the advantage. It's a wonderful thing. I love that. Yes. So I knew I was going to tell a couple of stories. As tall people do. Go ahead. I knew. How would you know? I knew I was going to tell a couple of stories, but then Rob and I have a relationship where we have always talked about everything as transparently, and no matter what it is, good, bad, ugly, sad, funny, wonderful. We just have no filter with each other at all in any way, shape, or form. And I knew I had to say something, not had to, but I wanted to say something that would be meaningful. And Pete, I was at a loss. And I'm not usually at a loss. And the reason I was at a loss, I give my mom's eulogy. Frankly, it wasn't hard. I mean, it was emotional, but I knew what I wanted to say, and I said it. I had a very close friend, as you know, die of ALS. We were robbed of any kind of ceremony because of COVID. So that we did an online thing, but not the same. So I've never really been in this position before, because that's it. My close friend died of ALS, and my mom passed. And that's my experience with this kind of thing mostly. And the finality was just killing me. Like it can't be that the next time I come to DC, Bonnie's not going to be here. I just can't be. There's no world where that exists. Now, I'm not stupid. I'm not naive. I know death happens. I know tragedy happens to everybody. In fact, it just happened to Mike. And Neil, for that matter, the two other people. But I didn't have that. I've known them my entire adult life. I've known these people, and my entire adult life, even before my adult life, when I was 18, and there was always Rob and Bonnie. Which is not to say Rob and I did not, after college, we were roommates for 3 years, but after college, we go to Las Vegas together, we go on trips together. Of course, my first wife and them traveled together, and I just couldn't make sense of it all. And so I couldn't think of what to say. And there were many people around Rob. Rob is Jewish, not particularly religious, but, regular religious. But there are a lot of people around him. His sister-in-law is very religious. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of religious things going on, and that's not me. And Rob knew that, and Rob wouldn't want that for me. It's not something I can give anyway. So I tried to think through it all, and what I finally said was, I knew Rob before Bonnie. I knew Rob during Bonnie, and I never, ever dreamed I would know Rob after Bonnie. That just wasn't a thing. Sorry. And then I said, but here's what I know. I'm not a religious person. I'm not a person of faith. I have no spiritual things to say, but I can say something real. Yeah. Which is, that I can do. I'm pretty good at that. Well, that's condescending for those who think the other things are real, but go ahead. I don't give a fuck. I was with you. Sorry. Those out there who are religious. You can say something real. I'm not religious, but here's something real. No, well, I get it. Yeah. But here's something that we can demonstrably see, as opposed to things we can only guess at. Sure. I won't hedge that. I'm sorry, people of faith. Faith is by definition something that you can't know. Sorry. I said, I've known Rob before, during, and now I have to know Rob after Bonnie. But what I do know is her imprint on his life. She made him a better husband, a better father, and a better friend, a person. That never goes away. No matter what course his life takes, he's 64, he's healthy. I don't know what his life is going to look like. He doesn't know. But what I do know is, as an on the ground thing, that will never, ever go away. And that's all I can think of to say. And then, and thinking about that in a more universal way, I've been thinking, I will, earth to earth, dust to dust. I'm an agnostic. I'm not an atheist. My wife's an atheist. I'm just an agnostic. But if you pushed me, I would say, when we're gone, we're gone. Yeah. We're just gone.
Yeah.
Who you affect and how you affected them is, I think, all we can really do.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think it's very wise. And
I don't know, but I
do. I think the one of the smartest, most impactful people in my life ever was a guy named Hank Moses. I was a personal trainer. He was my client. He became my mentor and my friend. He was the headmaster of the most prestigious private school in Manhattan, and before that, the dean at Harvard, freshman or something like that. Smart guy. The smartest. Had a heart attack. Came back from that. We kept exercising. We were basically taking walks, and he finally opened up with me. And he said something similar. I asked him, I think I asked him about death, and he said, I don't really believe that you die because you live on in the people that you impacted. And that really works for me. And he impacted me so much, not only by saying that, but by being that in my life. Like, I just always think about him all the time. And that sounds exactly like what you're saying about Bonnie and obviously Rob's life and in your life. Like, they're always there.
And then I kind of went full. That was wonderful what you said. And I think going forward, it makes me think that's more about life than death, I think. Because the truth is, we don't know. No one, until someone comes back and tells us, we don't know. So all we can act on is what we do know. And what I do know is, Rob as a person was impacted in these ways by her, and that is a real thing we can touch, see, observe, and feel. Yeah. And my friendship with Rob and all my other close friends, including with you, is something I can observe, feel. Yeah. I don't always understand it, especially in your case. But no, I'm kidding. But it is observable, and because I'm not a person of faith, that's the best I can do. So since then, I've been trying to. Rob and I have taken long ways before you and I started talking this morning. We took a very long walk here, and I mean, I'm letting him run through his emotions, whatever they are, And he's self-aware enough to know that what he's feeling today may not be what he's feeling in a week. There's just no way to know. And different people will deal with this differently. And this is what I do know, because Mike and Rob are actually incredibly different people. They're both lawyers, but they're incredibly different people. They will deal with this differently, and there's no right way. It's just a way to get you through it. There's just and I think this is the moment. These are moments in time, I think, when people have to be their true selves. Whatever that is, whether it's ugly, pretty, nice, whether there's so many different ways to think about Bonnie's death that I'm not going to go into. That there are many different perspectives one could have on it because there was a complicated life and her kidneys, and she was always. But all Rob can do, I think, is just be what he is and feel what he's feeling, no matter what it is. And all I want to do there, I know I tried to be there, is to be there to listen and to say I love you and how can I help? And sometimes even how can I help is not the right question. Sometimes it's just being there. But I will say this. It's so trite, but okay, I'm going to shift. Everything I just said, I thought was I was very obvious. I was emotional and serious. But I'm serious about this. This is going to sound stupid. In 1960 something, when I was like 9 years old, I watched the movie Brian's Song. It's a movie. It's a true story about a football player named Brian Piccolo, who in his prime got cancer and died, and he was white, and his best friend at the Chicago Bears was black. And in those days, whites and blacks did not live together on football teams on the road. they would not room together, especially in the South, but really anywhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a great movie. I recommend it to everybody. I have no idea.
Gail Sayers and Brian Pickle.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm guessing
James
it
Caan
does.
and Billy D. Williams.
I'm guessing, and James Caan just died, but I'm guessing it does stand the test of time. That's my guess. But in any event, the very beginning of the first sentence you hear in that movie is every true story ends in death, which they claim to be an Ernest Hemingway quote. I haven't checked it, but that sentence has always stuck with me for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because in fact we all die, but that's, and the point I want to make about that is, I know it sounds trite, but, death is part of what we have to, especially as we get older, death is part of life. It happens to all of us. It happens to everybody we know and love. And we don't, I think we're so far away in America, especially from dealing with it in any kind of way that prepares us for it. I think in other cultures, there are structures in place.
Oh yeah. My best friend in Australia has just lost his, stepmother's mother. So she was very old, but she was Thai.
Right.
And so I went through that whole process, like just on the phone with him, basically, where and then they did this and then they did that. But the way that people from Thailand and Buddhists, and it's much different. You're right about obviously, and I don't talk enough about it here. So I'm glad that we talked about it here. But I just want to say here at the end with you that you're saying this is not about me. But for me, it is, because I'm not talking to Rob and I'm not talking to Mike so what my question is, and the reason why I think this is a good conversation to tape and share is you and I are very close friends.
I'll leave that in your able hands.
You and I are very close friends. You have a lot of close friends, male friends and female colleagues.
I have my share. My fair share.
The question to me is, to some extent, it's interesting in that, coincidentally, 3 men around your age lost their wives. Usually men die before.
Well, 2 lost their wives and 1 lost their sister.
Forgive me. But 2, and in this case, you're there for your buddy who lost his wife.
Yes.
At a kind of an untimely, much too young.
It's much too young. Yes.
And so it's a question about, to me, it's a conversation, and I think it's really important to have about male friendship, especially in times of need. What do you do? What do you do when there is a loss? It could be a job loss, a breakup, addiction, anything really serious, or in this case, the loss of a partner. What is your role as a friend? How do men deal with that with each other? Obviously, there's a lot to be said, and people are different, but I think you're role modeling that for us, and I think that's important to talk about, to do something, to show up, as you said.
I think the first thing you do is show up. Obviously, that without that, there's nothing.
It's hard for men. It's because it's hard for us to deal. I'm being generalities, but you deal well with your emotions, or you deal openly with them.
I do deal openly. My mother would have said much too open. Not. My mother's a therapist too.
Yeah, she would have said that about me as well, probably.
She would have said
people
you
who know me say that probably. Yeah, but I don't mind. I like it. It helps me.
Well, I guess it does help me too. This conversation has helped me. Thank you. But also, I do feel like at this point in my life, because this is always true, obviously, but one of the things Rob and I talked about just this morning is it really can go like that. It's so cliche and trite, but it's true.
Yeah.
Now, you can't no human being can keep that in mind 24/7. We're not built that way. It's not something we can do. But it is something, I really believe that. No one lives life that way. It's just not built.
But there are things, because I believe that, I've said this many times, but because I believe that and live by it every day, when the girls or Val say goodbye, leave the house, I always have eye contact with them. Yesterday, Ava walked out. I go, Ava, you didn't even say goodbye to me. She's like, bye. I'm like, She turns around, and usually at this point, it's an eye roll, but I don't care. I got it. See ya. That's like keeping that and other daily practices with the people you care about whether you're talking to them. That's the way I try to keep that idea in mind. But like you said, you can't always, right?
No, you can't. And there's I think as long as you show up and authentic, there is no real right and wrong way. And different people have different needs. And that's my point. Mike and Rob are very different people. They both just lost their wives. And they're going to deal with it very differently.
Yep.
And I know both of them well enough to know that. And that's part of the I know people will say, people of great faith with, like, there are a lot of Jewish traditions that make this easier, like the Shiva, that's supposed to make this easier.
And community that religion often brings. So you get people that are.
And 100%.
But
I also think that's confining in a way too. And you don't really know what you need until you know, until it happens. As I had to say, but the overarching thing, other than I needed to be there for my best friend, the overarching thing is I'm still, to this morning, a week later, the finality of it doesn't make sense to me. I
understand that. I don't know what there is to say about that. I just keep coming back, though, to the theme of this conversation, which I want to be, what do you do when a friend suffers a loss, especially as an adult person? And what do you do? In this case, it sounds the simple answer is you show up in every way that you can. Some people will say, well, I don't have that many good friends. I'm a good person, but, and a lot of men, there's a lot written about this. And so I would say to that, cultivate good friends.
Yes.
As much as you can, as hard as that is for many of us.
And I do think for some people, again, it depends who you are, I think counting blessings is important. So, for example, Rob and Bonnie's work life was such that Rob does not have to go to work tomorrow and work an 8-hour day and, say, well, I'm really mourning Bonnie, but I have no choice. I have to go to work.
Right.
Mike has students. I don't know what Mike's situation is, but I'm sure Mike feels an obligation. If something terrible happened to me, I would take some time off, but then I would go back to my students. Count your blessings. And one of Rob's blessings is that of course he works, he's a lawyer, but there's nothing making him veer off the course of mourning that he's on. That's a blessing. Not everybody can say that. Some people have to make sure their kids eat, so for me, it is, and for Rob too, it is a time to say, this is a horrible, unspeakable tragedy. And there are blessings I have that I want to try to be thankful
Wow. Well,
for.
That's wonderful. I mean, to find things to be grateful in such a time is, I bet, a challenging feat.
It is. And it's not the right approach for everybody. It just depends on who you are.
Sure.
It turns out for Rob, that's the right approach. Yeah. And I'm trying to help him see that. All right, I got to end it there because I'm just, I got to end it there.
All right. Well, I think the theme here is to try to make friends with Segall. Have a friend like Eric. I'm glad I do. I know Rob is glad he does, and I know you are glad that you have the people in your life. And I really appreciate you sharing this with me, and all of our respect on behalf of anybody who listened to this, to all of your friends, to Rob, obviously, and of course to Mike Dorf, who I've interviewed, and you, Neil, and his loss, and anybody that is listening who has suffered a similar loss recently or at all. We really appreciate you.
One last thing that I got to say.
Please.
And this won't surprise you, but I have to say this. I have a huge fear and insecurity. This is unconscionably self-indulgent. And I don't mean it that way. And if you, for instance, it would be if we hung up in 5 minutes from now, you said, Eric, I'm glad we talked about that, but I'm just not going to air it. I'd be like, fine. I am nervous.
The only problem with this conversation is how much time we spent on guinea pigs at the top.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
The only issue I'm worried about.
Everything has an arc. Everything has an arc. So
I just hope people made it. If people made it this far, I guarantee it meant something to them. If they clicked off when you talked about the certain habits of guinea pigs, I don't blame them for that either.
I just don't. I'm not having this conversation with you of any need I have. It's just I like talking to you, and you think people like it, and that's why I do it. And if it didn't, I'm just nervous about it being perceived as self-indulgent, and that's not what it is.
Well, that's also what makes you such a decent person.
Well, I don't know, but okay. On that note, my friend, thank you.
All right, buddy. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.
All right, there he goes, Eric Segall. Go say thank you if you liked that, if you got something out of it. I hope you did. I certainly did. At @eSpinSegall. I want to do more conversations like that, have more conversations like that. If you want to have a conversation like that with me and tape it, maybe we could do it. standupwithpete@gmail.com. Send me a pitch. Let me know what you want to talk about. Maybe we can talk. Love to hear from you. All right. Love to hear from John Carroll, who wrote that interstitial music, by the way, earlier I played under the tweets. I forgot to plug that. Go buy his music, johncarroll.org. Thank you, Pete Coe. As always, thank you for listening, for subscribing, for giving a 5-star rating. Don't forget to do that. And I will talk to you tomorrow right here on Stand Up with Celeste Headley and more. Bye-bye. Be the change you want to see in the world. And have and be a good friend.
Knees, you gotta stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. Alright, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you